As promised, NFL Network reporter, our good friend Mike Garafolo joins us. Mike was at MetLife Stadium Monday night. Mike, that had to have been, tell us how surreal that must have been to be there for that moment when Rodgers goes down and there's so much hype around his appearance. And do you believe that may have been his last appearance on an NFL field?
Jay, I live here in North Jersey. I've got plenty of Jet fan friends, some optimistic, some who throw their jerseys in the canal outside their house, wrapped in a cinder block every time they're done with a player. And I relay that story because many have that fatalistic view, and we're saying, you know, he's going to get injured. He's going to tear his ACL in like week 4 or something like that. So for Aaron Rodgers to go down with an Achilles injury 4 plays into that game, best summed up in my tweet was, you got to be kidding me. I mean, that's what I tweeted. You got to be kidding me. I cannot believe what I'm saying. And when he got up and he stood there and he didn't move, I said to my colleague, Judy Batista, next to me, I said, Judy, is he not moving because he's okay? Or is he not moving because he very much knows he's not okay? And it proved to be the latter. Once he went back down, it's like it was clear in that moment, this man has suffered a serious injury. At the very least, a Liz Frank injury, a high ankle sprain, something like that was going to last. And then when you kind of looked at it, you're like, you cannot possibly be an Achilles. So at that point, once the cart came, Judy and I went downstairs. We saw him on the cart, headed to the x-ray room. They tried to clear the hallway. If you see the video that I tweeted, security tried to jump in front of me to stop me from taking a video, which I thought was hysterical because the network camera was right in Rodgers' face at the time. But get that guy with his cell phone, Jay. So I got that video for you as best I could. But yeah, it's just, and then the way that they came back, the Jets, the mixed emotions. I talked to Robert Saleh before the game. His brother David was in the South Tower on 9/11. And I asked him about that and the start of the season and everything. He says, I keep telling my wife, how lucky are we that on Monday we're going to get to experience every emotion that the human body can experience. The highs, the lows, the anger, the joy. And he got them all in that game. So I don't know if the Jets make the playoffs at this point. I would say in that moment, I'd say, their season's over. By the time I left the stadium, and that comeback had something to do with it, I kind of felt like this team's still got enough. And Zach Wilson, I expect to be better. We'll get to him in a second. But in regards to Aaron Rodgers and his future, I can't wait to hear from him because I have a lot of questions. Is he going to be around the rest of the year? We know how vested he is in Zach Wilson, how much of their friendship had existed before he came to the Jets, how much it's grown since then. And what does this mean for Rodgers? And Zach Wilson and the way he plays going forward could have a big impact on that. Let's say Zach Wilson plays well enough that you say, hey, he's got the job back. Rodgers may say, my work here is done, and I don't want to stand in the way and step aside. I mean, we're way ahead of this thing. I cannot wait to hear from Rodgers. I assume we will in the near future, but certainly a lot of questions for him.
And, you know, you touched on it, Mike. It seems like for Robert Saleh, he's already pushed all his chips into the middle of the table for Zach Wilson to take this team the rest of the way. Can they really afford to do that with this terrific defense and the fact that they basically had a team that at least our own Luke Wilson considered a top contender for the Super Bowl this year?
I agree with Luke. They're a fantastic team. They're a fantastic defense. They've got talent all over the roster. And from the moment, maybe not the moment that Rodgers got injured, but shortly thereafter in talking to Jet sources, it was clear. Zach Wilson is our guy because he gives us the best chance to win. And I kind of agree with that. Immediately it was, we've got to call Tom Brady if you're the Jets. Tom Brady looked to me like he was done last year. He couldn't beat the Browns, who didn't have a quarterback at that point, and yet Baker Mayfield goes into Minnesota with basically the same team and wins in week 1. I mean, I think that was a pretty good indication that it was time for Tom Brady to move on. It looked to me like it was time for Matt Ryan to move on. I don't see Nick Foles coming back, even though there's a connection with Joe Douglas from their time together in Philadelphia. Zach Wilson is going to be better. He looks different. He's got a different demeanor about him. His teammates are responding better to him, in large part because of Aaron Rodgers' influence. The hope was that it was going to be a Jordan Love type situation where over time, just by sitting behind Rodgers, observing, being around him, Zach Wilson was going to get better. Well, now it's a short-term plan, much shorter than the Jets had hoped. I do think Zach Wilson's going to play better. How much better? Well, that'll be the answer as to whether they make the playoffs or not, but I think they've got a shot.
Well, there's no pressure on him. All he has to do in week 2 is go into Dallas and face the Cowboys, so nobody will be watching that, Mike. Listen, Mike's going to stick around for us because he's such a generous guy, and a little later on he'll have more on the Chris Jones contract situation, NFL Week 1 injury news, a whole lot more. So Mike will be by later, so make sure you stay tuned for that.